Hello history buffs, and welcome back to our channel. When you think of Abraham Lincoln, what comes to mind? The towering figure in a top hat? The face on the $5 bill? Or maybe the solemn marble statue in Washington, D.C.? These images are iconic, but they only tell part of the story. Today, we're going on a journey beyond the monuments and myths. We're going to uncover the man behind the legend, a boy born in a humble log cabin who rose to the highest office in the land, a reluctant leader who wrestled with his own doubts and depressions, and a president who navigated the darkest chapter in American history. This is the untold story of Abraham Lincoln, a tale of hardship, heartbreak, and unwavering resolve that forever changed the course of a nation. So, get comfortable, because we're about to peel back the layers of one of history's most complex and consequential figures. Picture this: February 12, 1809. In a one-room log cabin on Sinking Spring Farm in rural Kentucky, a baby boy is born. There are no fanfares, no prophecies of greatness. This is the world Abraham Lincoln enters, a world of dirt floors, hard labor, and frontier uncertainty. His parents, Thomas and Nancy, were uneducated farmers, constantly moving in search of better land and opportunity. Young Abe's childhood was marked by tragedy. When he was just 9 years old, his mother died from what was known as milk sickness. This devastating loss plunged the family into grief and left an indelible mark on Lincoln, shaping the melancholic nature that would follow him throughout his life. Despite the hardships, one thing burned brightly within him: a ravenous appetite for knowledge. Formal schooling was a luxury on the frontier, totaling less than a year in his entire life. But that didn't stop him. Lincoln was a voracious reader. He would walk for miles just to borrow a book. By the dim light of the fireplace, he devoured everything he could get his hands on: the Bible, Shakespeare, histories, and law books. He taught himself grammar, mathematics, and rhetoric, scribbling notes on wooden boards because paper was too scarce. This relentless self-education was his true classroom. It was here, in the quiet solitude of the American frontier, that he forged the sharp intellect and powerful command of language that would one day captivate a nation. As a young man, Lincoln was a whirlwind of ambition and enterprise. He left home at 22 and journeyed to New Salem, Illinois. There, he tried his hand at everything. He was a shopkeeper, a postmaster, and a surveyor. He even split rails for fences, a task that earned him the famous nickname the Rail Splitter and cemented his image as a self-made man of the people. It was also in New Salem that he first dipped his toes into the world of politics, running for the Illinois state legislature. He lost his first election, but won the next, serving for terms. This was the beginning of his political ascent, a slow and steady climb fueled by his natural charisma, homespun humor, and a growing reputation for honesty. They called him Honest Abe for a reason. But his path wasn't all triumphs. Lincoln's personal life was a landscape of deep love and profound sorrow. He fell deeply in love with a woman named Anne Rutledge, whose sudden death in 1835 sent him into a spiral of severe depression, an affliction he'd battled his entire life, calling it his melancholy. Later, he met the fiery and intelligent Mary Todd. Their courtship was tumultuous, but their connection was undeniable. They married and had 4 sons, but tragedy would strike again and again. Only one of their children, Robert, would live to adulthood. The loss of his sons, particularly young Willie while in the White House, inflicted a wound on Lincoln that never truly healed, adding another layer of personal grief to his public burdens. Professionally, Lincoln established himself as a highly successful lawyer in Springfield, Illinois. He was known for his sharp legal mind, his compelling arguments, and his ability to connect with juries. But the political arena kept calling. The 1850s were a turbulent time in America, with the issue of slavery tearing the country apart. Lincoln, who had always morally opposed slavery, but was initially a moderate, was thrust back into the national spotlight by the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854, which allowed for the expansion of slavery into new territories. This was a line in the sand for him. He joined the newly formed Republican Party and, in 1858, challenged the powerful Stephen Douglas for a U.S. Senate seat. Though he lost that Senate race, the series of debates between Lincoln and Douglas became legendary. Across Illinois, the two men argued passionately about the future of slavery and the very soul of the nation. Lincoln's eloquent speeches, particularly his House Divided Address, elevated him to national prominence. He argued that a nation could not endure permanently half slave and half free. His powerful words and clear moral stance made him a leading voice in the anti-slavery movement. 2 years later, in 1860, the Republican Party, seeing his broad appeal, nominated him for president. Against all odds, the boy from the log cabin had won the presidency of a nation on the brink of collapse. Lincoln's election was the final spark that ignited the Civil War. Before he even took office, 7 Southern states seceded from the Union, with 4 more following soon after. The task before him was monumental: to preserve the United States. The early years of the war were a disaster for the Union. A string of ineffective generals led to brutal defeats, and public morale plummeted. Lincoln was a commander-in-chief with little military experience, learning on the job while facing immense pressure from all sides. He was criticized for being too slow, too cautious, too radical, and not radical enough. Through it all, he searched for a general who could fight and a strategy that could win. The turning point came not just on the battlefield, but from Lincoln's own moral and political evolution. Initially, the war was about preserving the Union, but Lincoln came to realize that the Union could not be truly saved without addressing the root cause of the conflict: slavery. On January 1, 1863, he issued the Emancipation Proclamation. While it didn't free all slaves immediately, it was a monumental act. It transformed the war into a fight for human freedom, preventing foreign powers from intervening on behalf of the Confederacy, and allowing African American men to enlist in the Union Army, who would go on to fight with incredible bravery. This was Lincoln's great gamble, a bold stroke that redefined the purpose of the war and the future of America. With renewed purpose and the eventual appointment of General Ulysses S. Grant, the tide of the war began to turn. Victories at Gettysburg and Vicksburg in 1863 marked a crucial shift. Later that year, at the dedication of the Soldiers' Cemetery in Gettysburg, Lincoln delivered what would become the most famous speech in American history. in just 272 words. The Gettysburg Address eloquently framed the war as a struggle not just for the Union, but for the principle of human equality and the government of the people, by the people, for the people. His words resonated across the nation, giving meaning to the immense sacrifice and offering a vision for a new birth of freedom. In 1864, in the midst of the ongoing war, Lincoln won re-election, a public mandate to see the conflict through to the end. By the spring of 1865, the war was finally drawing to a close. On April 9th, Confederate General Robert E. Lee surrendered to Grant at Appomattox Courthouse. The long, bloody nightmare was over. The Union was preserved. Lincoln now faced the daunting task of reconstruction, of healing a deeply wounded nation. In his second inaugural address, he called for reconciliation, urging citizens to act with malice toward none, with charity for all, to bind up the nation's wounds. He envisioned a future built on forgiveness, not revenge. But tragically, he would not live to see it through. Just 5 days after Lee's surrender, on the evening of April 14th, Abraham Lincoln was assassinated at Ford's Theater. The nation, just beginning to celebrate peace, was plunged back into mourning. His death elevated him from president to martyr, a symbol of sacrifice for the Union he had saved. Abraham Lincoln's legacy is immeasurable. He guided the nation through its most perilous trial, preserved the Union, and, in doing so, ended the institution of slavery. He was a master statesman whose words continue to inspire, a leader who combined profound humility with unshakable strength. But perhaps his greatest legacy is the embodiment of the American dream itself. Proof that a person from the humblest of beginnings can rise to shape the destiny of a nation and, indeed, the world. His story reminds us that leadership is forged in crisis, that progress requires sacrifice, and that a commitment to justice can, in the end, overcome even the deepest divisions. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the life of Abraham Lincoln. If you found this story as fascinating as we do, please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to our channel for more journeys into history. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. We'd love to hear your thoughts on Lincoln in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious.